What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's quite a bit to talk about today, from Warhammer 40K going absolutely nuclear in the last few days, and there's a new rumor that could explain why this is all happening, and there's some dire claims being made. Beyond this, Stellar Blade is apparently awful because it was made for the male gaze, and Niantic has turned Pokemon Go into an androgynous slop simulator. But let's first start with this rumor about Warhammer. I should preface by stating this first, that this rumor has not been confirmed across the board, and it does come from the website 4chan. However, the claim is allegedly being made by someone who has signed an NDA and has chosen to break their silence anyway. They also claim that they work at either Games Workshop or Amazon to some capacity and have some knowledge of the behind the scenes that are going on. But again, if this ends up not being true or anything, I would just like to state that again, this is a rumor. I'm not going to mic zero myself into making 6 videos in a row about things like the voices in my head telling me something, just so we're clear. I'm very much someone who likes to only report on facts with actual proof, but this rumor was really interesting, so that's why it's here. Anyway, according to this anonymous source, which by the way, I'll share the link to this 4chan post in the description in case you want to see it yourself, Games Workshop is allegedly being strong-armed by Amazon Studios into implementing things like female custodians into the lore. Games Workshop is also allegedly only mentioning the existence of these female custodians within lore indexes, but has zero plans to actually create figurines or any actual product that depicts a female custodian in any form. The reason for this strong arming is allegedly Amazon, after signing the papers with Games Workshop for the partnership, was not happy with the fact that Warhammer 40K is very strict when it comes to its lore, and they wanted some level of freedom when it comes to how they adapt things going forward. In Warhammer, of course, you have roles that are specifically one gender or the other, like the Sisters of Silence, for example. Obviously, they don't have men because, well, it has the word sisters in their title, so that makes sense. It's pretty simple, really, and that's why people like it. Anyway, Amazon doesn't like that at all, despite what fans think, and they want female characters in power armor as well alongside male ones too, for no other reason than apparently to virtue signal and show representation. And likely the main reasons for this change was simply because Games Workshop went into partnership with a massive corporation like Amazon, somehow not realizing that their IP would be changed to some degree once negotiations were finalized and actual brainstorming on potential shows and so on began. To me, the only real reason Amazon would push for female custodians is simply because if they didn't show female representation, they fear the series would suffer in critical reception from reviewers, who would undoubtedly complain and then lower the scores of potential shows because they don't have proper representation on screen. Apparently, they want to do the Eisenhorn story and wanted to inject more women into leading roles within the Amazon Prime live-action universe. And this has, allegedly, again, I cannot confirm this, but allegedly, Henry Cavill is very much against all of this. And he has, allegedly, behind the scenes, according to this, threatened to walk away from the project completely if lore is not respected with the utmost importance. Which we all get because look what happened to Netflix's The Witcher. He clearly doesn't want a repeat of what happened over there. Allegedly, within the next month or so, we'll start seeing articles pop up about Henry Cavill moving forward with Amazon on this project. But there is apparently severe tensions behind the scenes where Cavill is threatening to leave to some capacity. The anonymous leaker does state later on in the thread that they are putting themselves at risk of even saying any of this, and if they get caught, they would likely get sued into oblivion by Workshop and Amazon alike. They're apparently a grunt within one of these companies, and according to them, one of the main reasons Amazon wants female custodians or just more women in general in Warhammer altogether is they want moments within the series that spark huge social media reactions. Like, for example, they want something like a custodian fighting a battle and then they pull their helmet off to show that they're actually a woman this entire time, which would, obviously, cause the entire Warhammer fan base to erupt like a million Super Saiyans at once. So in a lot of ways, what's happening here is Amazon doesn't seem to care a lot about the lore and instead sees Warhammer as another property that they can mine for viewership numbers and subscriptions at Prime. But what worries me is what always did from the inception of this announced partnership, which is that Amazon has proven they can absolutely disregard critical lore and ruin things in the names of virtue signaling. I mean, rings of power does exist after all. And even Fallout, to a certain extent, features a female character in the leading role, even though realistically she would be dead within minutes of reaching the surface or worse. But having a female lead is more ESG friendly than a male one, especially one that is white, for example. Reacher on Amazon, of course, didn't help Amazon's ESG rating, and actually, let's go look at their ESG rating to show you what I'm talking about. On sustainanalytics.com, you can actually search companies and see where they rank on the ESG leaderboards. In case those of you watching don't know what ESG stands for, it means economic, social, and governance. Basically, think of it like a credit score, but for companies. And your credit is based on how woke you are and how much representation or diversity you have in your company. So if you ever wondered why companies always go out of their way to tell you they opened some initiative that's aimed at certain groups to uplift them or something, it's to raise that ESG score. Anyway, ESG scores are ranked from 0 to 50. 0 to 10 means you're doing good because you're not high risk. And 50 obviously means you've been a bad company and need rectifying. Amazon apparently ranks at 30.2 on the ESG risk rating score. So they are not doing well enough when it comes to ESG. This means other investors will look at Amazon and not want to invest in their company because it could affect their social credit scores by doing so. If this all sounds insane and really stupid to you, you're right, it is. This entire concept is moronic, and it goes directly against what makes a product or company actually good and profitable. And welcome to 2024, fellas. I've been fighting this nonsense for 2 years now, and it's not stopping. So as you can see, Amazon's ESG is not the best. In fact, they're in the lower end of companies when compared to their competition, which obviously looks really bad for investors and woke weirdos who virtue signal. The reason why I'm explaining this to you is to show you that the implementation of more female representation where it doesn't need to exist in Warhammer is not being done for genuine reasons. It's simply being done to get that ESG risk rating from that 30.2 that it's at to a more acceptable 10 to 20 or even lower risk rating. And the more pandering Amazon does, like changing your Warhammer 40K lore to fit their agenda, the better it is for them. Sure, they'll lose money and viewership numbers, but to them, millions of dollars lost is worth making that arbitrary score go down just a little bit more. But I think what this alleged rumor claims is that it's not Games Workshop's fault entirely. And clearly, they know that this lore change would upset the fans. I mean, take a look recently at their stock prices, and yeah, it's not looking good. But it seems that Games Workshop is attempting to mitigate the damage and ride out the storm of controversy by simply stating that there is female custodians all along. But they're again not actually going to make any figurines or any actual product that depicts this in physical or promotional form, allegedly anyway. So they're trying to appease Amazon in order to get this live action series to happen, but are taking what they see as necessary evils in return to make it happen. But of course, the alleged claim that Henry Cavill is not happy with these changes and has threatened his exit are not good no matter what. Because if Cavill were to leave Warhammer prior to even a teaser of a show or something happening, it would signal to the entire internet that Amazon's 40K live action series is dead on arrival. And they would be starting their marathon with bullets in both calves bleeding out while assuring everyone that everything is fine. But this does give some level of credibility since Games Workshop has a new codex about the Adeptus Custodians being released in 2024, which thatparkplace.com was kind enough to chronicle the relevant pieces within their latest article that's titled, "Numerous Warhammer players cancel their subscriptions and announce a boycott of Games Workshop after announcement of female Adeptus Custodes." Some of the excerpts from this upcoming codex confirm that female custodians exist, like this one where they say, "Custodian Calidus Torvela Kesh stood upon the bridge of a Cobra-class destroyer. Named Vigilant Flame, the warship belonged to the mighty battle fleet Solar. She lingered in the shadows at the back of the bridge, positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits or the armament shrines, or, in the case of Shipmaster Lethwick, stood ramrod straight before his command throne. There's more. It continues to say, Kesh was warned before anyone else abroad, sensing a sudden empiric energy spike coupled with the surge of overpressure and sharp temperature drop that presaged a teleport strike. Her guardian spear was leveled and armed before the first cry of alarm or howl of a klaxon rang through the bridge. So as you can see in this upcoming codex, they are indeed changing critical lore that has remained untouched for so long, and allegedly it's only being done in order to appease Amazon Studios pretty much because of the live action series. Before I move on, just remember this is all rumor, so if it ends up being fake or something, I apologize. But I figured that I'd let you know all that we can know at the moment just in case it becomes relevant. But at the very least, I can confirm that yes, they are changing the lore going forward, and that's already alarming. Will Henry Cavill leave? I guess time will tell. I hope everything works out though, but now let's head into the next big story here with Stellar Blade. That game is selling out everywhere as pre-orders skyrocket across the board. And like I said it would happen, websites are already starting to run hit pieces against the game prior to its release next week. The latest is from Inverse and it's titled Stellar Blade and the Male Gaze. There's a lot of toxic feminist nonsense in this article, but I want to read the parts that are the most relevant. Inverse said, and I quote, Eve doesn't seem to have any reaction to her own sexiness. There's no knowing facial expressions, no flipping of her long ponytail, which players can shorten in the options menu. She has no idle animation except when she's on a ladder, she just stands there. She's sexy, but doesn't know it. She's athletic and acrobatic, but entirely controllable. If she did know, if she could move for herself, it would shatter the illusion of many of the gamers championing her because she'd have the agency to be able to reject them rather than simply be controlled by them. The way we gaze changes in video games as it often depends on the differences present between gameplay and cutscenes. A lot of the time we aren't really looking at the avatar, we're looking through the avatar and with the avatar. This is most obvious during Stellar Blade's combat. All eyes are on the enemies waiting for an opening to counter or dodge. Eve is a blur, defying any gaze that would seek to isolate one part of her body from the devastatingly effective whole. During cutscenes, the perspective and the gaze changes. There's something there in showing the physical potential of that body type with combat and athleticism. It's not just nice to look at, then you get to the cutscenes and every single one of those narrative sequences starts with the camera pointed at her bum. That's doing something different. There's also a robot who follows Eve around during exploration segments, shining a light that frequently highlights her behind. Eve's body is both a site of empowerment and objectification depending on how we're invited to look at or through it. Based on the social media responses to news about Eve's body and outfits, clips of her way her bum and thighs jiggle as she climbs ladders, all this amidst the pushback against games that feature diverse characters and bodies, a lot of straight men seem to be assuming themselves as the rightful target audience of not just Stellar Blade, but video games in general. Statistics show that this just isn't true. As of 2023, around 50% of people who play video games are women. Shift Up assuming an audience of men and leaning into the male gaze so explicitly is, in essence, a marketing move that purposely others a huge number of potential players. If producers want to create video games that are only intended for male audiences, it's really unwise because they are alienating a huge demographic. With Gamergate, it was this idea of you are taking away our culture. It's not your culture, it's everyone's culture. Women gamers aren't new, women have always played games. There's a struggle for dominance where actually there's never been dominance. The truth is, a lot of people, men, women, non-binary, straight, queer, find Eve attractive. However, the way Stellar Blade is being marketed is drawing in the new Gamergate 2 crowd. And Eve is being used as a cudgel by which to bash other feminine protagonists and even women journalists like Kotaku's Alyssa Mercanti. Rather than just catering to the male gaze and creating hourglass figures and jiggly bits, why not consider the muscle mommies, the dad bods, disabled people? Greater representation in body types doesn't have to mean less attractive. It's not about making games less sexy, it's about making games more sexy for more people, end quote. Okay, there's a lot there, but that ending part especially is hilarious to me that they're mad that Stellar Blade apparently only adheres to the male gaze. And they're upset that developer Shift Up has not considered making characters within the game more representational of other body types. They even unironically state that Shift Up is wrong in not having disabled people or people with dad bods in it. However, the game is not out yet as of the making of this video anyway, and we don't know if they don't adhere to those sorts of body types. But disabled is a blanket term. I mean, there's the old guy in one of the trailers who looks like the village elder, but he's all part machine too. He doesn't look like he can walk or anything. I could be wrong, the game isn't out yet, so maybe he's disabled too. Plus, there's people in the trailer that you can talk to who are more machine than human, so they're technically disabled because they're not really human anymore, and I guess they have dad bods, but they're robots. Honestly, why does any of this even matter? Already they're running their hit pieces like I knew they would, and they're attempting to bring this game down because of what it represents to the gaming community. The fact that Inverse.com stated earlier in the article that they're disgusted that Eve can be controlled by the player, then they state that if Eve could control herself, she would be insulted by the player. Like, what are you even talking about? All this Inverse writer is doing here, along with the people they interviewed for this article, they are just attempting to push their politics and ideas into Shift Up's characters, and they're mad that they don't adhere to their ideology. Eve would not be disgusted to be controlled by the player, as if that is even an argument, because she's a video game character. Every character in a game that you can assume control is different. Men, women, robots, cats, dogs, whatever. To pull this woke feminist notion into this is moronic. But it's not surprising, sadly, either. They are just trying to paint narratives to hopefully cause enough people who read this article to feel disgusted with themselves for looking forward to something like Stellar Blade. And if they manage to succeed in that regard, then maybe they can affect the game's sales and overall cultural impact by effectively shaming players who want beautiful women in video games. But clearly, it isn't working. Like I said, Stellar Blade's pre-orders are insane, and the game is out of stock physically across the board already. And if anything, articles like this will just embolden more people to reject their nonsense and embrace big booba Korean babes instead. I said this quite a few times in the past, but mark my words, fellas, when this game's reviews do come out, which if you're watching this prior to those going live, they're going to mention the sexuality of Eve in pretty much every review. This game's release will be the Hogwarts Legacy of 2024. Maybe not as nuclear per se, because J.K. Rowling isn't involved, but they will attempt to suppress it. And I will be interested to see if Stellar Blade gets any sort of nomination whatsoever come the Game Awards or any other site. If it doesn't, that wouldn't surprise me since they only nominate stuff that has right think, or if it's so good they can't deny it like Elden Ring or Sekiro. But I am expecting lower than expected review scores for Stellar Blade by these Western games journalists on purpose. I also like how Inverse attempts to say Stellar Blade is being promoted to the Gamergate 2 crowd as some sort of gotcha, but this strengthens what I previously said. They're trying to shame you into not buying the game. They want to demystify Stellar Blade and make it some sort of cultural stain upon your public persona if you say you enjoyed the game or bought it. The very same thing as Hogwarts Legacy. I wouldn't even be surprised if they even make a website like they did for Legacy where they have records of which streamers or YouTubers played or streamed the game. Which, by the way, that was a real site that was called Have They Streamed That Wizard Game. And it was made to compile everyone who played Hogwarts Legacy in order to publicly shame them, or use that gotcha so they could lose sponsors or opportunities because they bought something that they deemed wrong think. But this is how far these groups are willing to go. They will shame you, attack, and attempt to belittle you for wanting to play something that they don't like. By the way, I platinumed Hogwarts Legacy and I loved it. I didn't stream it, but if they want to update their list and put my name on it, go right ahead. Just remember, it's ENDYMION with a capital E and the TV doesn't have a space, it's all one word. I just want to make sure I'm properly categorized for apparently being a bigot, so thank you. And if they do the same for Stellar Blade, please add me to that list as well. So everyone can know that ENDYMIONtv is absolutely an enjoyer of tiggle biddies and sexy women, which I am, by the way, guilty as charged. After all, I am a lesbian, I love women. Of course, other companies have made updates to their games that have also divided fans. We have Niantic, which I never know if I'm pronouncing right, which makes Pokemon Go, and they're a company that's based in San Francisco, which is obviously one of the wokest places on the planet, and this ties into Stellar Blade as this is what places like Inverse want to happen to things like Stellar Blade or even Warhammer 40K. Also from that parkplace.com we have this article titled, Pokemon Go players demand Niantic reverse newly rolled out avatar changes. Why y'all make everybody ugly? You can find thousands of replies to Niantic changing Pokemon Go's body types where people are demanding that they change it back. Gone are the hips or feminine qualities of characters, and now everyone looks ambiguous when it comes to their gender. Like, look at these side-by-side comparisons. It's not even up for debate, dude. They cooked your avatars. Like this user who said their avatar now looks like a lesbian, and I mean they're out of line, but they're right, they do. Look at these users' avatars who said, please tell me how you think the new avatar looks better in any way. Gone are their hips, they don't look feminine anymore, and if you do go look at their replies, you'll notice that the people complaining about these changes more often than not are actually female players. Cause despite what Inverse.com and Niantic and others believe, women actually like playing good-looking female characters. Because what woman out there wants to be ugly? Well, unless they're a crazy person, the answer is very unlikely. Most women go to the gym and wear makeup and buy nice clothes for themselves to take photos of their looks so that they can feel confident. And there's nothing wrong with that either, by the way. We love good-looking women who take care of themselves over on this channel. But these companies hate you ladies, and it's evident. Your individuality is being stripped from you, and you're gonna be labeled bigots if you disagree with them. They don't want diversity of body nor mind anymore because they want you all to look like amorphous gender beings, and then you'll be happy or you'll get banned. And it's just as I said in a video around, I think 2 months ago, when a ex-Naughty Dog artist kinda just blew this whole thing open. And they said that these changes to gender and whatnot are being done to only appease to trans people. Because if characters look too male or female, it will offend trans players, but really what this does is just make trans players only able to identify in games with ugly characters. Which in a way is more insulting than anything else, because it means these companies think every trans person can only identify with the character if that character is ugly and shapeless, and is that not more offensive than anything else? Ideally, they would make proper good representation for male, female, and trans players instead. Let the female characters be curvy and show their proportions and be feminine. Let men have broader shoulders and big muscles and be tall, and even to my short kings, let them be what they want as well. And if a trans player wants to have some combo of that, then they can have that happen as well. But no, instead all actual diversity is thrown out the window and replaced with designs that appeal to absolutely nobody. Now instead of properly representing anyone, nobody gets anything. And then you all look worse for it, including these companies who prove that they're tone deaf. It's not surprising though, considering Niantic has all sorts of initiatives to pander in different ways to increase their ESG score. I mean, after all, Niantic makes Pokemon Go, right, which is a Nintendo product, and let's go look at Nintendo's ESG score and voila. They're sitting at a 16.6, which is considered low risk, which means investors are far more likely to invest in Nintendo because of that. So this change by Niantic is only being done to get Nintendo's ESG score into that 0 to 10 area, where they enter the upper echelons of wokeness. Again, for comparison's sake, let's compare Amazon from earlier to Nintendo, and as you can see, it's a big difference in their ESG risk. Even looking further, Microsoft has an even lower risk in terms of ESG than Nintendo's, which explains all the nonsense coming out of Xbox. From Dustborn, that ugly Fable protagonist, and Halo Infinite and Starfield being full of amorphous ugly people too. It's all being done to lower that score, and that's what Nintendo wants, which is why your games must suffer. And tying this back into Stellar Blade and even Warhammer, this is why this is all being done. These companies are not concerned with profits and consumer satisfaction. If they were, they wouldn't care for these things. But this is all a deliberate attempt to pander as much as humanly possible in the glory that is ESG, unfortunately. So with Warhammer 40K's own Games Workshop allegedly not wanting to bend the knee but having to thanks to Amazon, Stellar Blade being incredibly problematic in the eyes of games media, or Niantic destroying Pokemon Go with ugly body shapes, as you can see fellas, ESG is hitting on all fronts simultaneously. The only real answer to any of this is to vote with your wallets and spend your money, time, and engagement wisely. Always ask questions, stay vigilant, but I thank you for watching, and please let me know what you think about all of this as well. Thanks to my patrons, there's quite a few new ones I've gotten lately, so please join my Patreon Discord as well so we can all chat. Thank you. Like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.